Hello out there. I'm the oldest nerd. It's time for Talking Movies with Professor O. Professor, how are you doing this morning? We haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, so it's good to see you again.
Doing great. We've managed to evade some tornadoes up here in Oklahoma,
That's good to
and
hear.
and the best thing to do when you're evading tornadoes and still have the power is watch great old films. So uh, I did that a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah. My room only looks like it's been hit by a tornado. We haven't. We've had a little rain and it was a little cold earlier in the week, so we're good. I wanted to say something about this that since we're talking about a Mel Brooks film, the latest Mel Brooks film is coming out Friday, and it's Spaceballs, the new one.
Whoa!
You know, they had
I
joked
didn't
at the
realize
end
it
of
was coming
Space
out. Oh, wow!
already. Yeah, they've got most of the living cast re- redoing their roles, and it's not a reboot. It's not a prequel. It's just another Spaceballs. And Mel Brooks had a trailer that came out, and he says, we've always been talking about when you're going to make Spaceballs, the search for more money. He says, well, I found the money, and so we're just going to call this the new one. And so it's Spaceballs, the new one that comes out on Friday. So that's
Oh God, that sounds
yeah,
fantastic.
it
Yeah.
does.
I was thinking the biggest noticeable loss I would think John Candy would be.
Yeah,
uh
John Candy, Joan Rivers, Dick Van Patten,
oh man.
and some of the more minor characters that usually were in all of Mel Brooks stuff will not be there.
Right.
But they do have um, the the main characters, the other main
Right.
characters there, and I don't know if Mel Brooks is going to be in it himself. I'm certain he'd probably have some kind of cameo at least, but they've got most of the others, and that should be interesting to see what they do with that.
And he is 100. If
Yes,
yeah, that that's incredible. That yeah, what
somebody forgot to tell him, I guess, because he's he still wants to make movies. I can't blame him.
I no, and when he talks about some of the stories of what inspired him to do this film, he talks about seeing the James Whale. How many people are around that saw the James Whale movie in 1931? I think he was like six,
Yeah,
and I think the mother said, "Get him out of the house," and so his dad takes him to this movie. If I'm not incorrect. In New York, scared the crap out of him.
yeah,
It scared him to death. And but there he is. I think the mother told the story of that's right, because he didn't want to open the window. And the mother told the story, and you could just hear where he's some of his humor from. Got to be both from mom and dad. But the mother said, well, first, the creature's got to come from Transylvania. Do you know how far that is? And then describes to this 6 year old Mel Brooks,
yeah.
how far Transylvania, and then it's got to get up to New York and all the things, and then it's going to hit our apartment building. And do you think somebody on the first floor doesn't have their window open? They'll have their window open. The monster's going to eat them before it gets to you. So you really could see that.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, that's astounding to think, that there he actually saw it, remembers it well, saw Son of Frankenstein, I think in
Yeah,
1939, was there at the cat, to see it. And
right. Well, what he wanted to do here was to make a tribute to the Frankenstein movies and be even match things like the camera angles and the lighting and all of that, and they pulled it off pretty well and made a comedy out of it. Now, the one thing that I it hit me the most about this, and I beside the fact that he'd probably seen the original movies, was that I had always thought this was Gene Wilder's movie, and he hired Mel Brooks to direct it. And that was the story that Gene Wilder always told. But it's not true. What
Right,
happened was that he and Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder started writing this together while they were doing Blazing Saddles. And Brooks
right,
decided that he needed to, because Gene Wilder had the best jokes written for it, that he would put his writing credit ahead of his own. And so it
Right.
shows written Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks and Mary Shelley. Interestingly, they all three jointly won an award for writing of this movie, though Mary Shelley died in 1851. But she got the award in 1979.
Oh,
So,
that is so cool. That is,
but anyway,
that
but
is
anyway, that
awesome.
was that was something that. But Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks wrote it together, and most of the fights that they had were in What Goes In, What Goes Out. And actually, the movie they filmed was twice as long, and they couldn't keep it that way, so they went bit by bit and cut out everything that didn't work by a test audience.
There are a lot of deleted scenes. That's
Yeah,
one thing I love about the DVD of the film is, and the DVD came out, I think, in a long time, fairly long time ago,
yeah.
2011, something like that. I mean, it's been out
There's a
10,
new one.
12 years.
There's a new one I was given as a gift. It's called The Incredible Mel Brooks Irresistible Collection of Unhinged Comedy, and it has it's a book with just uh, six, seven DVDs,
Oh
and
my goodness.
yeah, just all
What
of
a
the
man.
movies up to then.
Oh, well, on when you get
It
to
is
on the Young
published. It's
Frankenstein.
published by Shout. I've never heard of them.
Oh, that's a good company. That's a good company. They
You
they
have,
put out really good stuff. They put out
but
the
anyway,
Quatermass. Yeah, the Quatermass movies are on Shout. I love Shout Factory, but
okay,
that DVD is going to be loaded. It's got 11 deleted scenes and then commentary with Mel Brooks. I think it would have been fun if he had somebody with him, but he did the most amazing job of talking through the entire movie just himself. And he had to be in his late 80s or 90s when he did that. Yeah. That's
yeah,
oh, that's and so is that the
yeah.
front of the DVD right there?
This is the DVD set,
Oh
and
my
each of them
goodness.
has disc and of various films that he's done.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
That is fantastic. The and I love the way the credits. It reminded me of Citizen Kane, where you had Orson Welles and Greg Tolan co-billing right there
yeah,
side by side. And this is, yeah, Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder, and Mary Shelley. And the and he did it at the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie.
yeah,
And yeah, I think the reason maybe he gave the way what he said on the commentary was he wanted to give Gene Wilder first billing on the story, even if they're side by side, because he came up with the story. You know, he was pitching the story to Mel Brooks on the set of Blazing Saddles. I think he's apparently Gene Wilder had just wrote with a pencil on legal pads, and he
yeah.
had like 8 pages of ideas, and then they just on that night they got together on Blazing Saddles, they talked to the wee smalls, and then they would continually. That's the way they just worked through the script from then on out. And he
There's
said
a
it's
funny
so
story of how they worked through the script. They had an apartment that they were sharing in order to just work night and day on this, and there was one point to where Mel got into just a rage and walked out. And according to Gene Wilder, he came back a little bit later and knocks on the door. And Gene answers the door, and he says, "Look, if you can keep the racket in here down, it sounds like there's some madman having a fit up here." And that was as close to an apology as he gave for that.
is he's gonna was that in the scene that Gene Wilder, the famous dancing scene that putting on the Ritz, that Gene
Probably
Wilder
was.
insisted has got to go in the film, and that was the point. And there's some interesting
Well, the
articles
trick
about
was the trick was
yeah
how they were going to how the monster was going to do it, and it was Peter Boyle that came up with the kind of
yeah.
thing. He ad libbed that, and they liked it, and they kept it.
And apparently Mel Brooks did not like the musical number at all. It got too far away from the original films. There's no musical. This is, basically he felt
Yeah.
like this is where we're just going off the cliff with this musical number.
He also
And
didn't like the walk this way, which was an old cliche kind of thing anyway, until it got to the test audience. The test audiences found it funny. And
it
so
was
he used the same
hilarious.
he used the same joke in subsequent films.
Yeah, it was so. And what works is that Gene Wilder just shakes it off. He actually does it for about 3 steps, and then he just, "What am I
Yeah.
doing?" It's
That was something that Brooks said to the entire cast when they were in rehearsals. Said, we're making a funny movie. You don't think it's funny. You
right,
take it seriously, and we will think it's funny.
right. And that's the perfect. That's the way you have to do comedy, or
Yeah.
that form of comedy. You got to take it. He mentioned that Cloris Leachman did the best at that. I mean, she takes her part so seriously. And he said that she even she's serious the entire time. I mean, she can't crack a smile. If you're going to have Frau Blucher and cut to those horses and that angle underneath the horses,
Yeah.
you can't have the hint of a smile. And it's funny. Mel Brooks is the worst at himself in his own movies at starting to smile or wink
Yeah.
in a self-knowing
While he
way.
was directing, according to what I've read, while he was directing, he often had to put a handkerchief in his mouth to keep from laughing at what the performances were.
Right,
And
right.
in fact, the worst was, and this happened in the Robert Duvall, not yeah, Robert Duvall's scene as the blind monk.
Gene Hackman.
Gene
Gene
Hackman.
Hackman. Yeah.
Gene
Easy to
Hackman.
confuse those two. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not having a good day for that. And Gene Hackman is the blind monk, and the only ad lib that was in that scene was as the monster is, broke down the door and runs out. He goes to the door and said, "Wait, we were going to have espresso." That was an ad libbed line, and they go to black immediately afterwards. The reason they went directly to black is the entire crew burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And every time they tried to redo it, they had the same problem, and so they kept the first take and just cut it right there,
Oh, it's
and
fantastic.
put in black area because nobody could keep their composure on
When,
that line.
when I was a projectionist at the SFA Theater in Nacogdoches, Texas,
Hmm.
that is, I had a transistor radio. I'd listen to my share of Astros games, but of course I love films. But then again, we were a single run theater with like 200 seats. I say single run. We were not a multiplex. We're
Yeah,
one at a
yeah,
time, one movie at a time. And we'd run, if Young Frankenstein, I did the math, we'd always get the big films the next year. And so I was watching it in 1975 when I
yeah.
was in high school, and
A lot of people don't realize that the way these days when they release a film, they release it in all markets at once. But at one
right,
time they had what, maybe 10 films that went out, and then it just crossed the country. And so we would see, we would be lucky if we saw the film before the Oscars came out.
exactly. That's exactly this. This was post Oscars. I mean,
Yeah,
or maybe, yeah, post Oscars. I mean, yeah, it took forever to reach the Nacogdoches, and it was. Oh, I had so much fun. Yeah, in the middle of the dark high school years, the Young Frankenstein just lightened things up. We had it a couple of weeks, but the blind man scene. No matter what I was doing as a projectionist, I'd have to get the next reel ready in the other projector because we went back and forth and ping pong between the two projectors. But I watched that blind man scene every single time. And the fact is, it's so funny when you're watching something that's a parody. Um, and of course, there's a ton of original humor in this film. It's not just
yes,
a parody, but the blind man scene was in the original film. And so there I am watching. I think Cinemark had a re-release of Young Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, I want to say 2016, 2015. And so there I am. I hadn't seen the original Frankenstein in years. And so I'm watching the blind man scene, and it is so, you just want to crack up laughing because I had seen Gene Hackman scene so much more often than you get to the original, and it just cracked me up. Same thing happened to me in Son of Frankenstein
yeah,
when I'm so used to Kenneth Mars as that's the inspector,
Yes.
and and then you go back to Lionel Atwell. Was it Lionel Atwell who
Yeah.
was the yeah the was the and he just cracks me up with his arm. It just
Right.
and
The one thing that I was surprised at, I didn't think about this, was the original films. It wasn't until Son of Frankenstein that uh, the assistant was Igor.
oh, that's right. That was the
In the
first
original
one.
in the original Frankenstein, his assistant was Fritz,
Right.
and
And it
they went ahead with Igor with this one because it was just you know more known publicly. People would know Igor wouldn't recognize Fritz because it was only used in that
Igor.
one film. Igor, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had to be one of the cleverest gags in there that he pronounced it Frankenstein.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There was a cut scene in there to where they gave the monster a bar mitzvah and they named him Frankenstein.
I did not know that. I
Yeah.
did not see that cutscene. That is yeah, that's and it's weird that, getting back to Frankenstein and just the it feels like and I heard a podcast talking about this too, but I remember it striking me when I was a projectionist. It feels like when we go to America and in the plot of the film, in the will, which in the deleted scene, it's a hilarious deleted scene. You listen to the will on a record, and the will, it's a record of the grandfather, basically bequeathing everything, to young Frankenstein, the grandson, only if the grandson assumes, takes up the mantle of being in the medical profession. And not only that, he had to be an esteemed doctor. So all the relatives are listening to, they're going to get everything. It's going to be terrific. But then they switch sides to the records. The record had two sides on this deleted scene.
Yeah.
So the first side is setting up all the things they're going to receive. And then he says, unless. And then the guy in the deleted scene, who's the same actor that comes to talk to young Frankenstein. Later on, we meet the actor. He goes
Yeah.
to the medical scene,
Yeah.
and
That was on that Falkstein.
yes,
Richard Haydn is his name.
that's him. And apparently, he was. Mel Brooks was saying he was a health food nut, loved health food, except for the fact he smoked all the time. But anyways, so in this deleted scene, he again is the executor of the will. He flips the record over. It says unless, and then you flip it over, unless young Frankenstein. I don't think they called him my grandson. Becomes a medical
Frederick,
doctor
yeah.
and an esteemed medical doctor, and all the relatives are hoping, well, I hope he's not an esteemed medical doctor. And of course, they find out, no, he's actually the fifth highest doctor in the, ranked fifth highest ranked doctor in the country. But so that scene was cut, and we first meet the man you mentioned. We first
Yeah,
meet
Herr
him
Falkstein.
right when he's in the back of he comes in the lecture to hear Gene Wilder lecturing, and he sits back there, and he pays attention really well, and that's when we realize, oh, I can't remember where I was going with that, but anyway, I know that's it feels like that lecture classroom is in 1974 when the movie was made, but everything else feels like it was in 1890 or 1910. It's just a
Yeah.
strange, yeah.
Well, it has a number of little. I think they play around with the uh, mistaken time frames. I mean, I'm not sure they really care
They really care. That's exactly
of what
right.
year it's actually happening in. Let me say something about also Liam Dunn. He plays the guy who is the volunteer who comes in into the classroom. He's the person that they put the neural
Oh yes.
numbing on and kicks him in the crotch. Now he was also Reverend Johnson in Blazing Saddles.
Oh man.
Before that, he had been a casting director. He'd never been on screen before, and so and he had a bad case of COPD. And so after every take, the crew was very concerned about him. they'd get him up off the table and they say, anything we can bring you, orange juice, oxygen. So
to help him from take to take.
yeah. I don't know if they were being serious about the oxygen offer, but it shows.
There was a lot of. Oh God, Marty Feldman was apparently a chain smoker too.
Yeah.
And died in Mexico,
Yeah.
Mexico City, I think. He was.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had Graves' disease, which caused his eyes to bug out like they do, and of course they didn't line up, and he breaks the fourth wall like 5 times during the picture. The first time where it says "damn your eyes" and he says "too late," and kind of makes fun of himself in that. Of course,
you
they
know,
did that also in Silent Movie. It was
there was a scene that's a little quiet. Apparently, there's some reference, like parody referencing scenes. One is that Mel Brooks is reading the Lancet, the medical, not Mel Brooks, Gene Wilder is reading the
yeah,
Lancet on the train. And apparently, that was, they really tried to do that train scene pretty accurately. I guess it would have been a Son of Frankenstein,
yeah.
maybe reference.
Well, they parodied all 4 of the previous Frankenstein movies.
That's
And
right.
in fact, one of the townspeople said, we've dealt with these Frankensteins 4 times before. So they made
Exactly.
some reference in that.
That's exactly. You're thinking how many times? Yeah, that's the.
This film was made for like $2 million, made $90 million. It was the most
Wow,
it was the most any Frankenstein movie had made until the next one, which was just called Frankenstein, which was made about 10 years later.
wow, wow. And now we've had so many. It feels like, and since then, it makes you wonder if that was. Well, of course, Hammer had a bunch of Frankenstein's in the 60s, late 60s, 70s. They were doing their take on the Hammer films were doing their take on Frankenstein. But it does make you wonder if this also helped kick us into the more recent, I say more recent, 50 year in past 50 years, but there have been so many takes on Frankenstein. It just but because of the money they made, and it just was so successful, even though it's a parody and a comedy,
Yeah.
it's
But
different than
was
most.
it was a comedy, but it had a lot of truth underneath it, and I think
It
that's
does.
probably what made this film work, is that it wasn't just a bunch of jokes. It was a tribute with jokes in it. It was
Right.
just a slightly askew of, and the story by itself holds with the other stories.
Yes, perfectly. Yeah.
It was
I saw Son of
perfectly reasonable
Frankenstein.
story.
I did not see Son of Frankenstein till till after I saw Young, and Son of Frankenstein really ties into it beautifully well. And yeah, they really played by the rules of the previous Frankenstein's, and it ties into it perfectly, like you said. It just the grandson comes back, and one parody thing that got me. This is just a small thing that feels like a parody. In Son of Frankenstein, I was watching for every scene with Inspector Kemp,
Yes,
and because that is Kenneth Mars does that so well,
he does.
and so in one of the scenes, it wasn't with Inspector Kemp, but the little boy goes to bed in Son of Frankenstein, and uh, the son of Frankenstein is talking to his wife, and and also that's right, that's right. Inspector Kemp comes in. The He explains that his arm was ripped from, and
Hmm.
they Kenneth Mars explained that again. His arm, it was ripped from his socket by the monster. Up while they're talking, the little boy is asleep, and Igor opens a door. And when he opens the door, it's just his face. You just see this framed face of Igor watching the little. And it reminds me of when we get when they're looking for what made the music, and they're going in Young Frankenstein. They're going down to the basement, and they're looking at all the different skulls. And the last skull is Marty Feldman, is
which
Igor.
which the label underneath said, practically dead. They had a year, 10 years dead, 1 year dead, 6 months dead,
6 months
practically dead. The handwritten labels were done by Mel Brooks, interestingly, But
That's right.
yeah, but and the person they were looking for, Hans Delbruck, actually was a historical figure, but the Nobel laureate was his son, which was uh, Frank Delbruck or something like that. And they decided though to use Hans Delbruck because it sounded more like Mel Brooks.
Oh, that's that's funny. That's and then it comes out to Abby someone.
Yes,
That's one of the best scenes.
Abby Normal. We have a friend near named Abby who we had. She worked for me at one time, and someone else who she wasn't very fond of would call her Abigail. Her name wasn't Abigail. She said, and she came to me and she says, "I don't want to be called Abigail. I was never named Abigail. If you want to call me anything else, you can call me Abby Normal," which she had seen this film too. So that
That
worked.
works.
That worked. I think of her as Abby Normal ever since.
You know, when you think about that, with that scene with the Abby normal brain, the two of the scenes that work the best with Gene Wilder are when he's trying to be calm. No, no, sit down, sit down, sit down. And Igor, tell me what happened with this brain, and I'm not gonna do nothing wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. And then at the end of the day, I put a Abby normal brain in a 7'6",
Gorilla.
50 yeah. And that reminds me of the scene. It's one of the best scenes of the whole film when when the monster will not wake up. And it's like these things happen in science. We must accept our losses as well as our
Yeah.
victor, as well as our wins with grace, humility, and grace. And then he just turns around, wake up. Gene Wilder, incredible.
Yeah.
And you and you believe him. I mean, it's like you were saying with it's not just a parody, it's not just a comedy. It's got the human the side of things. And he really and when he finally it's when he says, I am a Frankenstein, there's
Yeah.
really got some meaning to that.
It
He's
does.
gone on this journey.
It does. Though we're talking about quotes, this is my absolute favorite. This is the one where he's going to bed. Would the doctor care, says Frau Blucher, would the doctor care for a brandy before retiring? No, thank you. Now, the timing on all of this, when he says no and thank you, the space between the no and thank you goes longer every exchange. Some warm milk, perhaps? No. Thank you very much. No thanks. Ovaltine, which she ad libbed. Nothing. And I think that he almost breaks there. Thank you. I'm a little tired. Then I will say good night. Good night, Frau Blucher. And the horse is whinny. So that's my favorite thing. And Ovaltine was ad libbed. And to this day, if I should get up to go to the kitchen or something
Yeah,
and ask Christine if she wants something, and she'll say no, I'll say Ovaltine.
yeah.
We don't have any in the
Ovaltine.
yeah we don't have any in the house, honestly.
It's and that scene, the whole idea of that scene is nowhere to be found in the original films.
No,
And that's why
or the
you
horses
can
or the horses going crazy either.
right.
The people have tried to figure out what it was about Frau Blucher that scared the horses. Although the horses, when they saw her, weren't scared at all. It was only when her name was mentioned.
Right.
And Mel Brooks jokingly said is because Blucher is German for glue, which it isn't. So
Oh, that would and it's not.
it's not. It's not. It was just. It's just a dumb joke. They put it in there just as a dumb joke. Every time they said her name, the horses would go wild.
Two of the scene that the what how it made $90 million is you think about it the funny thing is we've had more time to this point right now in 2026 between Young Frankenstein and now than there was between the James Whale version and Young Frankenstein. But even then, that still was a long time. That was 44 years between the original Frankenstein in 31 to or 43 years to Young Frankenstein in 74. So that people that have seen Young Frankenstein, and especially back in 1974, you couldn't rent it on VHS tape. there, if you saw Young Frankenstein, you saw it on TV afternoon theater, yeah, TV afternoon shows, after the shows that we would watch in the afternoon with the movie host. That's how you saw the original Frankenstein. But you
Yeah.
didn't have a chance. So you didn't have a so there's a lot of part of that. There's a big part of that audience that had not seen Frankenstein.
Yeah.
But the movie, they laugh their heads off, even if they don't realize that the Ovaltine scene is just pure whole cloth new stuff.
Yeah.
But the way they did the old scenes, the blind man scene is funny on its own. It's
Yes.
hilarious
The
on its
thing with the
own.
little girl, which was in, I think it
Ah,
was Bride of Frankenstein, was
right.
yeah,
Hilarious on its own.
with
It's just
exactly the same, except that she was thrown into her room. But that didn't happen in the original film. But
which is he and Mel Brooks goes to great lengths to explain that was a dummy, that and not the little girl that. And to tell you the truth, I bought it. I really, it looks like a little
it
girl
did.
flying, wee, flying. I thought they maybe shot it backwards or something, but the way she, when
Yeah.
monster is loose, windows must be tight or whatever, but that scene is funny on its own. And then they came up with so many scenes that fit into gothic horror. They got the period right. And the villagers and Inspector Kemp, they get so many things right,
Yes.
but then they put their own twist on it and make it funny.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you could leave it there and still be a good movie,
True.
but then they add a human twist to it. The human, you actually care for these characters, and when he
Yeah.
says "I am a Frankenstein," it actually means something. I would say that that means more than a lot of this when he assumes the mantle and says, "This is me, this is my heritage." That's probably the most meaningful version of that in any
Yeah.
Frankenstein movie
That's true.
that I've seen.
Well, I loved Peter Boyle's speech when after the mind transference,
Oh,
and it was very eloquently done, and once again dead serious,
dead
and
serious,
and and
right?
and, and it worked. Although I have to say that some of the biggest laughs are just watching his reactions. He had no dialogue through most of the film, but especially in the scene with the monk, his eye rolling, his deadpan was just perfect. And
Just perfect. And there's a human element right there. He and that's what made that scene so great in Bride of Frankenstein. I think you're with the monk, with
yes,
the
yes,
original scene. It's the first time anybody has treated him like a human being, like
yeah,
somebody other than, and it plays beautifully in this film. Even the eye rolls, he never loses patience until the very end when they set his thumb on fire. But other than
that was it was a like a 5 minute scene, and
yeah,
it was something that's most memorable. And
and apparently Gene Hackman wanted to be in that.
he
With
was he was was a tennis partner with Gene Wilder, and heard that he was making a comedy, and he says, "I've always wanted to be in a comedy because I'm kind of typecast where I am." And so Gene said, "Well, we'll see if we can find you a part," and the monk was what they did.
Yeah. Oh, just it worked perfectly, absolutely perfectly.
It did. It did.
Another thing you mentioned too, the Ovaltine scene. For one, you get Cloris Leachman. He's Mel Brooks said just took everything so seriously, not a
Yes.
hint, and had a serious but different emotional tones to whatever. Sometimes it was serious and yet
Hmm.
empathetic, like playing the violin for the
Yes.
first time, and then other times it was the Ovaltine scene. Another scene that he mentioned, and I'm trying to remember this scene. He mentioned that he in his commentary track, he said they had in terms of he said it was just perfect. It's as they're walking up the stairs from the dungeon. I'm trying to remember this exact scene. It's later in the film, and they're walking up the stairs from the dungeon, and he says he describes you've got to time everything right, and he mentions a rat-a-tat-tat kind of funny, and God, what the heck is that scene there? And as they're going up the stairs, we keep cutting to Frau Blucher. Way late in the film, I'm gonna have to find that.
I think it was the time when they thought the monster was dead, and so they leave and they go back up the stairs.
That's it. I think that's got to be, yeah, yeah. It's,
Yeah,
but it definitely walking up the stairs, and it's timed perfectly with these cuts.
yeah.
Some of the reaction shots, like the scene you mentioned, there are two reaction shots that just get me every. They're hilarious. The scene you mentioned where Peter Boyle is talking, and he mentions, and people have fear. He mentions the word fear, and he cuts to the villagers, and they're and the other reactions that it's just a classic using like one word to get a reaction shot. It's in the scene when they're talking to all the scientists at the theater when they're going to watch this performance. All these scientists, neurosurgeons, doctors, they've come in. And isn't it interesting how scientists often carry a head of lettuce with them wherever they go?
Yeah.
But or else they were issued your head of lettuce, sir. Yeah, and so in that scene he mentions genius, a Markov genius, and it cuts to the science. It's
Yeah.
just like a dog, a doggy treat word for scientist. Genius.
The speech was very similar to the speech in the original movie too. That's another thing
Ah,
that pointed out. By the way, if you noticed, this is one of those things you have to freeze frame for, but Anne Bancroft was one of the scientists in the audience.
I did not know
Yeah,
that. That's incredible.
she was just
Yeah.
visit. She was visiting her husband Mel Brooks on the set, and they put her in the scene.
And they put her in the in the theater.
Yeah,
Is.
this is something, and I think a lot of people know about this, that they used the original lab equipment in the original Frankenstein movies, and it was designed by Ken Strickfaden, and
Ah,
he had kept all of this stuff from 1931, and was still living in 1974, and had all that stuff in his garage. And Mel
right.
Brooks found out about it, offered to make a deal to rent the equipment, and gave Strickfaden the screen credit, which he had never
Oh,
received in the previous films.
oh, that's that's incredible. We watch credits. You watch credits back in the day, and I remember as a kid watching credits. It was always the slowest part of because the movies always had the credits front loaded. From
Yeah,
the very
they did,
beginning.
very
Nothing.
beginning.
And but now you go back and look at those credits, and you realize, wait a minute, it feels like there must be a ton of people that were left out.
Yeah,
And that's a perfect example of that.
they've
Now
gone
when
though. They've gone though in the other direction almost too much. We find out who does the craft services. I mean,
yes.
why do I care who made lunch for them? But it's in the credits.
Oh, we know the comptroller and the accountants and the
Yeah,
accountant secretary. Yeah, that's it exactly. But yeah, we've kind of gone the other way too. But when it came to production design, you might have one person that they would give the entire credit for wardrobe,
yeah,
but or makeup. But there were so many people extra that worked, or production design, just the one person, like we talked about with the Bond films, with oh gosh, it'll come to the Goldfinger film that
hmm,
very famously, and he also was a production designer for I believe he's a production designer on the film that we just did 2 weeks ago about Sherlock Holmes.
yeah.
The
7%
six,
solution. 7%
yes,
solution.
right, and he was this production designer for that too. But sometimes he would get credit, but nobody else. And
Yeah,
so that's I'm so glad that guy had his stuff because it's beautiful. It looks wonderful, and I'm guessing that was all on set. All in front of us, in front of our eyes. The way the lightning and stuff like that.
yeah.
Nothing really. They didn't have digitizing back then. You could draw in laser beams and stuff like that, and phaser beams. You could draw that in. Do you think any of that was drawn in, or do you think all those effects were
Well, even in the '79, they didn't have many digital effects. So my
right?
guess is they probably did it the same way they did before, because they got I forget who the camera operator was, um, but he was one who came from that era.
Right, absolutely came from that
So
era.
they wanted to make it look as authentic to the other films as they could.
Which I think a lot of that stuff is just right in front of the camera. The lightning, the stuff, that you because you could get, you could do that. You could stage that for the camera. The the all the electricity sparking, things like that.
Yeah.
The one thing, and I'm sure you read this too, where Mel Brooks, he made a cast of Peter Boyle's head to get that kind of an X-ray look inside
Yeah.
his mind, inside his brain, and so he did a cast of the head, kind of a mold, and then put a light inside that to kind of give it that, and that was a terrific
It really
on
was. It really was.
practical effect.
Practical effect. Yeah.
Yeah,
They also used green makeup on him so that in black and white he would have the same prominent features.
that's fascinating. Because
Yeah.
that was when I went to film school. We didn't really. There was one thing we shot with black and white, but that was I an extra degree. They never talked about. We never talked about the makeup you use when you're in black and white. The makeup to bring things out, and so it was green makeup that was bringing out the features more.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
and they did that a lot in older films, especially in the early ones when the cameras needed so much light in the silence. They would often use very different colors in the makeup in order for their features to stand out, or else they just wash away.
Oh, and the cameras needed a ton of light. I'm guessing in terms, it's funny. The original Frankenstein probably had an ISO rating of, for how sensitive the film is,
Yeah,
no more than 25. I'm thinking.
probably right. That was
I-
1931, so it would be just barely into the talkies by that time because that was only 1925. They started putting uh, uh, dialogue into pictures, spoken dialogue, and let's see, and a lot of theaters by 1931 probably hadn't already converted completely to sound.
right. That's exactly. And I was thinking about, the even like the ASA rating in old photography term,
Yeah,
it would have been 20, maybe ASA 20, not sensitive to light at all. I'm
yeah,
guessing this film stock in 74 would have been probably 200, 250, something like that.
probably.
But the way they lit it, you're exactly right. That DP that they used just got the look exactly right of the director of photography. Got the look exactly right for the looking. I mean, it was perfect. It's not too grainy, but it's just beautiful black and white photography. That's oh man, and kind of expressionistic. I think Mel Brooks was probably going for that Nosferatu look too. For
Yeah,
oh, and the shadows were fantastic too.
they really
The
were. It had very much a Norrish look to it for a time before they really made film noir, but at the same time that yeah, I think in black and white photography it's very important. You could tell me that that you need to have more depth, you need to have more shadows.
right, right, and just so evocative. I was checking cinematographer was Gerald Hirschfield was cinematographer,
Yeah,
and he Uh, my goodness, he lived till I had not looked him up before. He lived till he was 96. He only passed away in 2017. But so he had worked on he worked with Gordon Willis, another outstanding cinematographer. But just so starts off with a film called Shades of Grey in 1948. The cinematographer did Fail Safe for Sidney Lumet back in '64,
mm-hmm.
and then Cotton Comes to Harlem, uh, and of course Young Frankenstein, and just did a ton of films after Young Frankenstein. Just did a but a really really good cinematographer.
Yeah. Interestingly, Cloris Leachman did her own makeup for Blucher,
My goodness.
including the wart on her chin, which even Brooks said, "Well, what's that for?" She said, "For character."
That's right. That's right. And I had heard she was inspired by uh, uh, a woman, a kind of very severe character in the Hitchcock film called Rebecca,
Yeah,
and who also had a wart on her chin. So yeah, kind of added to her character. That's exactly she. What the quality she brought to the part. Just and I'm sure you think about stuff that's happening on the set that the actors are bringing to the part are incredible. Um, the some of the ad libs, I'm sure I can't think of. Was it Marty Feldman that had some of the best ad libs, or
Well, they all had ad libs. That was the thing. There, oh, I forget exactly. Well, Ovaltine, of course, was one
yeah,
of that.
100%.
The Madeline Kahn, where they're about to kiss, and she says no tongue. That was an ad.
Oh,
That was an ad lib, and Wilder held on to it even after the cameras quit rolling, started talking like this.
and do you know in one of the deleted scenes, so he's on his knees in that scene. It's so strange. He's on his knees, and he's like by the bed, and and she's saying, "Don't you want to just wait? Can't you just wait before you throw yourself at me?" And he's like, "Nah." So he walks out on his knees, and there's a deleted scene which makes sense because basically the way he decided that when Terry Garr and who's they're attracted to each other, of course, the lab assistant
Right.
and say it again.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And so they're attracted to each other, and they realize, it might be the deleted scene. I think there's a deleted scene. No, we can't do this. It couldn't work. And but he frames everything as if it's going to be an intellectual discussion. But we'll have an intellectual discussion like how fast is the speed of light. And so she comes up, believe it or not, in this deleted scene, she says, "Well, doctor, I think it's 186,000 miles per second." And somehow that leads them to kissing, and so they call that their twists. They call trysts. They called that an intellectual discussion. So as a follow up to the scene with Madeline Kahn, he comes along and knocks on the door. The door's already open, and there's Terry Garr, and he says, "I think we're going to need to have an intellectual discussion." And she says, "Oh yeah, come on in." And he's still on his knees and goes in.
Yeah.
So now you know what the intellectual discussion is, and now you know when in the scene with Madeline Kahn, when Igor is there, you take here are the gals, here's the bag. I can't remember what the bags or what is he anyway.
Yeah. You, Igor, get the bags. Okay, you take the blonde. I'll take the other one. And
Exactly, and
doing a Groucho
in
Marx
that scene,
impression. Yeah, I believe
and in
that's an
that
ad
scene,
lib.
Terry Garr in that scene is saying, "We were just having an intellectual discussion," and in the movie you're thinking, and young Frank, Gene Wilder goes, "Nine, nine, no," and now you know why he didn't want anything about an intellectual discussion, because an intellectual discussion was an intellectual discussion with their bodies, so more than their minds.
Yeah.
And Madeline Kahn, oh, that scene with Igor. Igor is when he's, yeah, you take the blonde, I'll take the brunette. It is incredible.
They had to keep refilming that scene because he does a deal where he bites her fox stole,
Right?
and most of the scenes, most of the takes, he's got feathers in his mouth afterwards,
Yeah.
and they have to, and of course that messes it up, so they had to redo it several times.
It's incredible. They've got that on the gag reel. That's part of the gag reel, and it's interesting as part of that. You see different angles. You can see that they did not use, well, in getting good coverage.
Yeah.
And they were using single camera production, film style, and so but they kept most of that scene in profile, and but there is a scene where you're looking directly at Madeline Kahn's face, and it's just so interesting. And she's listening to Terry Garr as prompting her lines, but behind her, Igor's back there, and you can see really when it's the best shot of him biting that fox stole is in the gag reel. And of course, he ends up with that stuff in his mouth every time. It's,
Yeah. Now, a little off of what we were talking about, but I want to bring up Terry Garr. This was the first movie she had been in where she had a speaking part. Before this,
whoa.
she had been in an Elvis movie. She was a dancer, and so she would dance, but she didn't really have many lines. And so she really wanted this part. They originally wanted Madeline Kahn to play the assistant and someone else to play uh, the girlfriend, but she auditioned um, realizing that the part called for a more endowed person than she was. So in the audition, she had stuffed her bra with socks in order to in order to get the part. And Mel called her back, and when he decided he wanted to test her again on this particular part, he said, "Can you do a German accent by tomorrow?" And over the phone, she goes into a German accent. I could do that today, and see you this afternoon. And what she was doing was an impression. She worked for the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. She was one of the extras in that, and
Ah,
and Cher's wig designer was German and had that thick accent, and so she just did an impression of that.
that worked out great. And then Madeline Kahn then takes the other part,
Yeah,
and but it's but
Madeline
Inga
Kahn
has a
actually wanted the other part. She didn't think that she would work for Inga. Inga, by the way, is feminine of Igor, so that's kind of
perfectly matched.
yes.
A roll in the hay. Yeah, that's
She said that Gene Wilder was a jerk, and I think the reason she said that was because he laughed at everything. They had to do like 16 takes uh, on the Abby Normal. Partly because, of course, Marty Feldman did it differently every time they shot it, and Wilder couldn't contain himself. But he also they had to do a quick close up in the classroom sequence where he stabs himself with the scalpel, and
right.
he opens his hand just where you see the scalpel stuck in his leg, and then they go to a close up, and the reason they went to a close up is because he lost it right about there.
It's a perfect close up. It
still
works.
still it was
Yeah,
perfect timing that he hits it, he stops for a beat, opens his hand, and that would have been funny if he'd just said ouch when he did it.
right. That's it. Class dismissed. Yeah, this time watching it, two of the funniest scenes were one's just I'll go with the last one first. Just a visual shot of Madeline Kahn the second time we see her when they're married, and she comes in the room and she's got the huge wig with the Bride of
Yes.
Frankenstein, and she comes in and what. Cha, 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 cha.
Well,
It's just
that
bonkers in the room.
the original song she was supposed to sing after having assumably sex with a monster
Yeah.
was cheek to cheek, but she asked Mel if they could change it to "Ah, Sweet Mystery of Life" because it begins with "ah."
Oh my goodness. It was perfect. It was just
Yeah.
way better. I mean, that song just explains everything.
Late,
It just,
later,
yeah,
later, she's singing "Battle Hymn of the Republic" because it was the only thing they could find that was public domain. They didn't have the budget for
that's
another song.
and that's hilarious. When she's singing that, it's perfect too.
Yeah,
Yeah, unleashed a swift sword. Like the with the other scene that just cracked, and that scene is just she walks over to the bed and then she puts her thumb on her hip, psh, it just
yeah,
is. And then the other scene, I had not, I just it kind of caught me by surprise. It's when they're for the like the third time they're luring the monster back to the castle, and they've got the violin and they're playing it through a circa 1928 or whenever that's the setting would be in the movie
yeah,
1890s speaker. The like was it electrified? I'm thinking that speaker, or
yeah.
but
It
it
was it was they had oh gosh Kellogg microphone. It was one of the kind with the springs and the ring, and
Whoa!
the old
Right, right,
20s era, 1920s era
right.
microphone.
What
And
was it called again? A funny zero
I
microphone?
it was I don't know what you would call it. It's a carbon mic basically, but
Right.
a number of companies made it, and I think most of the companies that made it went out of business afterwards. But that was a common thing that you see in some of the old 1920s pictures of these silver microphones suspended by
Right.
springs over a ring stand.
And then that goes to this like trumpet speaker that's
Yeah,
going out into the valley, and that's the first time I think we got the violin, but that's the first time we see Igor playing a French horn.
have one
And the
similar.
that is exactly right. That
Yeah,
is exactly what that is. It was
this one is
just so
set to where you could put springs on it, but I just don't have them.
ah so and the springs, I'm thinking keep it the purpose of the springs to keep any bouncing, any kind of before it
Isolation,
gets
just to keep from telegraphing from the table or the floor.
right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
We use we
Oh,
use we use ponytail holders now
ah,
for most of
that
them.
makes right. Same thing
Yeah.
to get that buffering effect.
Mm-hmm.
Where yeah, but that whole setup with they're all up there, and it's just the way it's shot is well, I mean, God, and then you're right. I forgot about the other scene. You know, the way that scene is shot with the trumpet. I mean, the trumpet speaker, Igor on the French horn. It's just ridiculous. It's perfect. And then I forgot that they used Kenneth Mars' arm to crash through the door.
Yes. I like the dart scene in that. Now
Oh,
they had agreed early on that Mel Brooks would not make an appearance in this picture. However,
right.
he ad libbed the cat in the dart
Oh,
scene where he throws the dart and misses, and Mel from behind the camera goes, "Ew," and
that's
that
right.
was
That
him.
was
He also did the sound of the wolf. He did the voice of the grandfather on the record that was cut, but also in the voiceover where the Gene Wilder's reading from the diary. And let's see. Also, the picture of the grandfather in the bedroom is Mel Brooks.
that's incredible. That yeah, and that so many of the scenes you mentioned, they hearken back to Gothic horror and Frankenstein films. So they're so good. You think, what couldn't was that scene in the original film? The scene with the darts is so perfect that you're
Yeah,
thinking that was in the original. I don't think it
I
was
don't
in
know. It
Son of
wasn't. It was
Frankenstein.
not. It,
But it's it's just, and you know it's just beautiful writing because how can you add stress to Frankenstein because he's covering up that he's working on the monster at that point. How can you add stress? And you know you do the game of darts and Kenneth Mars cheats and he goes and puts all the darts dead in the middle of the dartboard, and then he comes back with his thumb. He's got all sorts of parts of his body that will make sounds. His mechanical thumb.
yeah.
And you know, boop, 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 nice grouping. You know? Well,
There
one
were a
thing.
lot more darts in the car, by the way, as it drove away than they
Oh
were
yeah,
actually
that's
throwing. But that's a whole different thing.
more
But
darts, and the cat got a dart. And the driver of the car had a dart in his head
yeah, yeah.
and his cap. You know, one thing that got is kind of thinking of a little bit of Mel Brooks and where he came from. Apparently, he had worked on, and I'm not that familiar with some of these shows, but I'd heard of it, the Show of Shows, and then he worked with Sid Caesar
That
as a
your
young writer.
show of shows was Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca. That was the big TV show. Milton Berle and your show of shows were the two great big shows. And Mel Brooks was the junior writer. Neil Simon was the head writer for that
Right.
show. Carl Reiner was one of the writers, and
Whoa.
and
Larry
let's see,
Gelbart, maybe
Larry.
from
Yeah,
MASH.
I think so. And Selma Diamond was basically they redid that as the Dick Van Dyke Show with Dick Van Dyke playing Carl Reiner and Rosemary playing Selma Diamond,
Oh,
essentially. And
uh,
she was the only female comedy writer that was around at that time. and
Wow.
they had about 10 writers for that show, and Mel Brooks was the youngest. He was always late, and so when he came in, they'd say, "All right, what's your joke?" And he would usually have one ready. So
Now, was that on the Sid Caesar show or the Show of Shows where Mel Brooks
well,
was
there
the?
was that was your show of shows, and that was Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca. And later there was another show called Caesar's Hour. Your show of shows was 90 minutes. Caesar's Hour was an hour, and it came on after that. It was basically the same thing. It was like the difference between I Love Lucy and the Lucy Show. It was just kind of the same thing.
Ah,
Still
it's a good analogy. That's
and then of course Mel Brooks was one of the creators of Get Smart. He and Buck Henry.
I did not realize that, and I did not realize I'd heard of the Show of Shows. And I'd heard of the Sid Caesar show. Haven't seen many cuts for. Apparently, incredible humor, just ahead of its time. And you're right with that cast with of writers. That's incredible.
A lot of what those shows did were things that a lot of people wouldn't even understand. They did an entire opera once on the show, and at the end of the opera, everybody dies. Then they all get up and sing the finale.
Just kind of
so,
bizarre stuff. That
yeah, yeah.
what happened to Imogene? I mean, you know, I knew you know this stuff because you're so good with the with radio from the 30s, 40s, and I knew you knew your TV. And I was reading about little about Mel Brooks's background and how you're right, was worked with this incredibly writing cast. What happened to was there Imogene Coco? What happened to?
Um, let's see. She was in a TV series called "It's About Time" during the
Right.
'70s. It was a bad comedy. It had she played a cave woman along with Joe E. Ross, who his catchphrase was "ooh ooh." And
Uh,
it worked. I thought that was just for the show. Actually, that was just his bit that he did wherever he went.
was
I,
she
I
one
never
of the
understood what was coming
writers?
about that.
Was she
Uh,
one of the writers on the
no,
Show
no,
of
no,
Shows?
no. She was the lead actor. She played along. She had a great deadpan when
Ah,
they did sketch comedy mostly, and she had this um, guilty looking deadpan that worked real well. She died in 2001.
oh,
Um, she's
I know
in
she was. I did read where she was, or where I was doing a little reading. I knew you'd know. You've seen these shows. The opera example is exactly the kind of humor that
She actually was in
probably people
National
didn't even
Lampoon's
get it.
Vacation. She was Aunt Edna in National Lampoon's Vacation. She
Wow.
was the
So
one
she
that had the dog.
impersonated her.
She's the one that had the dog and that kind of thing. And
Who was?
she was also in Moonlighting as Miss DePesto's mother.
Oh my goodness. My good. So who was she replaced by when they did replace her in the Show of Shows? I know that. I know that's
Oh,
a.
she was with it throughout, and then Caesar's Hour
Oh,
came along later. But
gotcha.
yeah, she started out on Broadway, and gosh, all kinds of stuff here.
The writing for that is just amazing.
Yeah,
The
she
talent.
had. I'm thinking if they give a like 45 credits. Yeah, she did some Love American Style. She did Brady Bunch, Night Gallery, Bewitched. Um,
Wow.
she was in some bit parts and some soap operas and things like that. She worked pretty consistently. She made a good character actor, but her comedy timing though was just considerable because she had this face that just you noticed. She had kind of a page boy haircut and kind of a big mouth, kind of bug eyes, and so uh, she had uh, uh, she had very good comic timing, very good reaction kind of stuff. She played off Sid Caesar very well.
Right, right, right. That's it sounds like yeah, on your show. That's right, your show of shows. That and that
But
I
anyway,
was
that was that. But yeah, certainly. Um, yeah, I'm surprised Mel Brooks didn't use her for something because she would have been around about the time he was doing his movies.
That's a good point. That's and I cannot find yeah, Imogene Coco, and she was it felt like when and like by 3 years later or so they had replaced her with, but I can't find out who she was replaced by, but she's got it. Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. She was terrific. What a great cast, and the writing for that is just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mel
Well,
Brooks,
I mean,
Neil Simon.
when yeah,
Good
when Neil
lord.
Simon is your head writer, you know you got something going.
Yeah,
But
Carl
just
Reiner.
about everybody that you know as a comedy writer was on that show.
Yeah,
And if
yeah.
you've ever seen the film My Favorite Year, that was basically a retelling of your show of shows, and and their main character was basically Mel Brooks,
Wow, that's right. That's exactly right.
and
The
it's based on a fairly true situation where they have on a I, oh gosh a swashbuckling type of actor that
in my favorite
was
year.
in My Favorite Year, which was not
Right.
he was not used to doing things on live television, obviously, and so it made an interesting picture. It wasn't a Mel Brooks did not direct it; it was just done by his production company.
Yeah, and Peter O'Toole's in that. And
Yeah,
then
Peter
but
O'Toole
you
played
are
the
correct. A common misconception from Wikipedia is that Larry Gelbart wrote for the show of shows. He did not, and neither did Woody Allen. They came in way later.
yeah
But yeah, that's fascinating. No, it sounds. I knew you'd know the history of and which is such an important start. That show kind of informs. You learn about that show and you realize. I mean, we think of all the wacky stuff that like the lettuce that comes from nowhere. The
yeah
wacky stuff that it feels like it kind of connects back to that type of humor. I think you even mentioned a lot of people didn't get it in the humor in the show of like people after the opera they all die and then they get back up. That
yeah.
where does that come from? And it
People
comes
that
from
didn't
the
live in the
mind of
big
those
cities never
express.
saw opera, and so the idea of doing opera on television was kind of edgy.
Yeah, yeah, that's and do you think that show was canceled because it was a little too edgy? It sounded like it was. Sounds like
Now
your
we're in
show of shows.
1948. There's only two networks at that time that are doing television, and well, three, and
Right.
one is Dumont. It doesn't even make all markets, so people would watch television just because you could see a picture. And
Yeah.
so, the popular programs were like Milton Berle that just did silly comedy, and your show of shows. I mean, it was all on NBC, and that was what everybody was watching. There were NBC
It's,
stations that reached most of the country, and so that's what
it,
a lot of people saw until the mid '50s when television became more mainstream. But
the Sid
I figure you could just have somebody sitting there looking at you, kind of like a podcast does now, that would have people watch it just because it was the novelty of it.
yeah, and apparently Sid Caesar was that show was a spinoff from the show of shows, and
Caesar's Hour, yeah,
right, right, and there might have been more spinoffs. I'm not sure that came from the your show of shows, but what a god! And you think of the name when you got like two and a half networks on in 1948, and the
yeah.
name of this show, even your show of shows. There's not much to watch, but there was genius. Talk about what a writing staff, and so many of them lived for so long. I know Dick Van Dyke did not write for that show, but he's still
No,
with us and 98 years old. Mel Brooks,
he's 100 years old now.
100 year. Wow, wow, and Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner lived to a ripe old age.
Yes,
Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner would visit each other in their 90s. I think they
they
had.
they had supper together every day.
That is so
They
cool.
one would go in one house, one would go to the other. They had people cook for them, and they would eat and then tell jokes to each other until they got tired of each other and
That's
went home.
there is so much in this film that connects to American comedy, great American comedy.
Yeah. Now that said, Brooks admitted that Gene Wilder did all the good jokes that were in this. So
Ah,
his direction style, you can tell, because it does go to the absurd, but the a lot of the jokes in there were Wilder's, other than the ad libs.
right, right. That's and yeah, it's Wilder had incredible. Yeah, what great comic writing skills and
Yes,
just
and
yeah.
incredible timing. I mean, his timing was just so on point, from the scalpel scene in the beginning of the film to the exchange with Frau Blucher. No, thank you. It just it worked. You make a straight line funny, and put
You
the
know,
candle back.
the scene with comic timing is where you're right. It's when they discovered that the monster is alive. And you mentioned the Ovaltine scene. It's perfect comic timing. It's when Frau Blucher is walking up the stairs and they're figuring out it was your cigar that was left smoldering. For
Yes,
me to discover it was your violin that was still warm. And
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 every time she said yes, it would be in a more dramatic way with a
yes,
chord on the violin. Yeah,
and then I was in love with him. Yeah,
he was my boyfriend.
yeah, he was my boy. And each shot is just perfect. It's a little dance. It's just perfectly done.
The other big ad lib was, and Marty Feldman didn't do this for the film, but for the rest of the cast, to see how long it would take them to notice that he was switching sides of his hump. They got half the half of the movie filmed before somebody caught on to that. And and then that's when they decided to go ahead and film that and put it in the beginning of the picture, where this is your hump change size. No.
Oh no,
Yeah.
he was
he
doing
was he
that.
was he was doing that just to see if the cast would
What
notice.
hump?
And in fact, in the scene where they're on stage, he doesn't have the hump at all.
that
And they cut the part where they said, "What happened to your hump?" And once again, he said, "Not in tails." And they decided that wasn't funny enough, so they left it out.
that's that. Yeah, oh, that's incredible. And
Really
yeah,
is.
so he started changing sides, and they didn't notice somebody.
Right.
And you can imagine that there's a continuity person watching everything else to get perfect. How was that cigar? Where was the violin? Where was the and they missed the
Yeah.
hump.
They missed the hump.
It was perfect. Marty Feldman, just genius.
He really
And
was. He
yeah,
really
that
was.
was, the music is good too. It just
Yeah.
some of the songs, the evocative violin,
Yeah.
and
They had a I cannot now remember where they say that, but they give credit here to the violinist who played all the violin parts through the film, and he was a concert violinist that they found. And I guess it would make any difference if I gave the name; you wouldn't recognize it. But still, it was yeah. They put that together very well, I thought.
the music is so classic that but it's funny, I had not heard of the composer John Morris,
Yeah,
and did a lot of he did the music for the Elephant Man,
yeah,
and apparently I'm checking it. I had not yeah, the Elephant Man and Spaceballs. So he was a frequent collaborator with Mel Brooks.
yeah.
But yeah, the music's perfect for this film. Just and High Anxiety. I was wondering if he did yes, he did High Anxiety. The music is the Mel Brooks Hitchcock film, just so good.
They had a couple of things with censors they had to be careful of. For
Ah,
instance, the cut on Madeline Kahn's dress was not as plunging as in the original 1931 movie, because in 1931 the production code had not been established.
that's right.
And so she had to dress a little more conservatively. And when Terry Garr mentions that the monster must have an enormous Schwanzstücker, uh, that actually doesn't mean in German, it means tailpiece. It's not,
They had to be careful with it. Yeah.
it was
Oh,
made something that sounded dirty but wasn't.
Apparently they were looking for and yeah, Mel Brooks talked about in the commentary that we needed, yes, they do the transference, but and everything's going to be okay, but we needed one more scene, and which actually is two interrelated scenes of the wedding night for both of them, and that was the best ending. One thing on the deleted scenes, it would have been incredible for to use actually that I would it would now he would have used this on the deleted scenes. He called this the parade of the actors, the players parade is what he called it.
Hmm.
And basically he got everybody in that incredible set um, to come down. I think the set was at Fox, but a lot of the outdoor sets were at MGM. But so this the indoor set at Fox, the incredible set looks like the son of Frankenstein castle. They're walking down. All they do is they walk down the steps in their own way.
Yeah.
They're kind of playing to the camera. They look at the camera, and it's called the Players Parade, and it's just perfect. And the last one is Mel Brooks. Is the only time and it would have been so much fun to put that at the very end post credit scene just to show them walking down because and they're all in character. They look great. Madeline Kahn's got the big wig, Bride of Frankenstein wig,
Yeah.
and yeah, it would have. I wish they would. I think she has that on, but they're all dressed. It would have been really neat. But that was a fun. It just ended up as a deleted scene. The only other yeah we talked about all the deleted scenes basically. The only they had a highwayman scene. They had which is called Jack the Highwayman, Jack Sprout the Highwayman, and
Yeah.
basically it would have been a scene where the monster is loose, probably after the blind man scene. One and there's a highwayman, a bandit, who the monster comes along. He doesn't kill him or anything, but it just doesn't work. It's the one deleted scene you can really see that that's why that went to the cutting room floor.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
It's yeah. The film itself, it's the way that uh, you would wonder how some films get made. You don't think about it on this. This is something, except for the fact that it was in black and white, which Mel Brooks said that they tried to say we'll shoot it in black and white, but or we'll print it in black and white, but we'll shoot it on color stock so that the people in Peru that just now got color would see it in color. And Brooks wouldn't go for that because he knew that that was just a lie that they
ah,
would release the film in color.
really in
But
color. Yeah, yeah,
but other than that, he didn't have a whole lot of non-funding things that would have kept this film from being made. It was probably the least uh, difficult movie to make as far as content is concerned.
right, right. That's with the budget you're saying.
Well, I mean, there's budget aspects on most films, but I mean, if you take into account his previous film, Blazing Saddles, they say couldn't be made today. In fact, it couldn't have been made then because basically
Content.
he
That kind of content.
ignored everything that they tried
Yes,
to censor out of Blazing Saddles and left it in,
right.
except for one joke about in the scene with Lily on Stupp.
Right, right. I get. Yeah, content. Well, yeah, you're right. This
Yeah.
this one. Well, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's
There wasn't anything really that was controversial in this film at all. Just it worked very well as on multi levels. One of being a tribute, one on being a comedy,
right.
and it works on its own as a comedy without knowing the background. It works on the background without worrying about the comedy. It's really a unique film in that point, and something that I don't know if anybody else could have made it.
Yeah, yeah, and even a drama with some people say Gene Wilder's character doesn't necessarily have a character arc, but he's got a bit of an arc. He grows. He does change. He's not the same person that he is at the beginning that he is at the end, as he is
Well,
at the
that's
end.
true. I mean, he accepts who he is, and that he had spent in the very beginning of the movie, all he was doing was denying that he
Yeah.
had this ancestry, denying that anything of that had any validity to it. And he turns completely around on that. He realizes that not only is he a Frankenstein, he's got the same compulsion to meet a destiny as he did before, and that he comes to terms with that and stays in Transylvania.
The one film that would have been a good follow up to, I'm just thinking, would be to finally cure Larry Talbot. If anybody's going to cure the Wolfman, it would
Yeah,
be this version of Frankenstein. I don't think he gets in Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Boy, it's been so long since I've seen the end of that. I don't think Larry Talbot gets cured still. I
yeah.
think he's
Well,
so.
I think that we have gone beyond our time on this, but this is such an enjoyable film. I don't know how
Oh,
many times I've seen it myself. I don't know how many times you've seen it, but it's one of those that every time you see it, it's still funny. It's still fun to watch.
Oh, you find something, and Mel Brooks says he watches it once a year, and he finds something new every time. And I can see how you can do that.
That's saying a lot. The fellow that
That
made the
is saying a
film
lot,
learned something more about it after that.
especially since he's 100 years old. He's
Yeah,
watched that a lot of times.
yeah, you can do that. We should hope to be so lucky.
I'm in.
I am too. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm not going to worry about numbers. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. We'll figure out what we're going to talk about next week. We've been talking about various films that we might think about. We may go into the past again, seeing that this kind of goes into a time period that is a little anachronistic. Maybe we'll find something that's a little more lined up. But we'll let you know about that next week when we come back. So thank you for joining us. Until next time, don't go far.